Hello, this is the Stories Beside channel. I release videos every day for you. Subscribe and click the bell. Yes, how could you think that about me? Michael looked at his wife, Adriana. What else was I supposed to think? She was very upset with him. I don't know, call me first before you jump to conclusions. He resented her for being jealous of him today. Michael worked at a firm in the city, not the least of which was his job. Everything was going well. He never complained about life. Once upon a time, a handsome boy was born into an ordinary family. When he was brought from the hospital, he did not yet realize how lucky he was with his parents. His mom and dad just adored him. Whenever Michael needed to buy a toy, Dad would do it. They always spent weekends in the park. Everything was good in the family. Michael learned that from his parents. He never hurt girls at school or at daycare. He stood up for them. The boy was decent, honest. If his class teacher asked him to do something, he always did it. After graduation, Michael entered the institute. No one doubted that he would graduate. And now, in his senior year, his parents were going to celebrate his graduation in the country. "Mom, Dad, I'm not going with you," he told them. "What do you mean, you're not going? It's your party, and you won't be there." The woman didn't understand. "You don't understand. Graduation at school is one thing, but now it's graduation at the institute. I'll never have a time like this again. And now we're going to get together with our friends to meet. Are you trying to stop me?" He stood, smiling, looking at his father and mother. "All right, fine. Where are you going to celebrate?" His mom asked him. "We haven't thought about it yet, but I think we'll go to a cafe," the young man said. The graduation went well, as Michael expected. And then it began. In all his years, he had never experienced the pain he felt the morning after graduation. "Michael, hi." He picked up the phone and heard his aunt's voice. "Hello, Aunt Betty." He wasn't thinking about anything today. Most likely his aunt was calling to congratulate him on his graduation. "Sweet nephew, don't get upset." She started saying strange things. "Auntie, do not understand you speak more clearly," frowned Michael. "Yesterday, when your parents were driving out of town, their car was thrown into the oncoming lane. There was a head-on collision." The woman said. "What?" Michael asked her again. "Michael, your parents are gone." She told him. "I don't understand." He shook his head and couldn't get his head around what his aunt was saying to him. "I realize you're in shock right now. I just want to tell you, I haven't done anything myself. I will come soon, and we will solve everything." She spoke quickly. She hung up. He hung up, went into the room, sat down on the couch. What's going on? Had Aunt Betty told him the truth? But his father was an excellent driver. He would never let him fall asleep at the wheel or anything else, Michael reasoned. The aunt came, a couple of days later, to organize the funeral. Even when the young man saw his parents in the casket, he couldn't believe what had happened in the cemetery. He cried quietly and realized that he was left all alone. Yes, he has an aunt and uncle, but they live far away, and the guy will not be able to come to them with his aunt. At least he was socializing, and he didn't know anything about his uncle at all, just his name. The moment Michael got home, he didn't want to talk to anyone. "The tribe won't even talk to me." A woman approached him. "Please leave me alone." Politely, he asked her. At this point, Michael walked over to a picture that showed his mother and father. He took it in his hands and then stood silent for a long time. "Dad, Mom, I promise you I'm gonna do great, and you'll be proud of me." After that, he put the picture back in its place. Michael went and lay down on his bed. In the morning, the aunt was going to leave, but before that she decided to go to the cemetery one more time. She took Michael with her. But like at a funeral, he stood aside. A single tear rolled out of his eye. It slid down his cheek and went into the ground. Michael realized that his life was now divided into two parts, what he had with his parents and what he had now. In his hands, he had a diploma of higher education. He could start looking for a job. The young man could not find anything suitable for a long time. The profession of cashier salesman did not suit him. He wanted something serious. So 6 months passed. One day in a cafe, the young man overheard a conversation between two men. They were talking about their firm needing a courier. Michael had already made a joke. He had already heard about this firm. And now that there was an opportunity to get a job there, it didn't matter who. He didn't want to lose that chance. Within 10 minutes, he was sitting next to the men, showing them his accomplishments to this point in his life. What are you, man? What kind of courier are you? Look at your credentials, school, college. All the couriers in the world would have one if they had one of these on their hands. Said one of his new acquaintances, "Do you want to offer me something better?" Michael dared to ask. "Sure. Come back tomorrow. Here's my card." The man handed him a plastic card. Michael took it and went home happily. He entered the entrance, waited for the elevator. As soon as the elevator arrived, he stepped inside. Wait, he heard a voice and turned around. A pretty girl was running after him. He held the door for her. When she came in, he stood looking at her from the side. "Do you live in this entrance?" he asked. "No, I came to visit a friend." She laughed. "I see. Who's your girlfriend?" "I just live in this neighborhood. I know everybody." Did he mean what he said to her? "You probably don't know her. She came to visit her aunt." Well, that makes sense. "Why haven't I seen such nice girls in our elevator in a long time?" Michael told her. He was smiling. The elevator stopped. "Are you getting off on this floor?" the young man asked. "Yes." "Why?" "No, it's just that I'm coming the same way." He was very surprised. But when they got off the elevator, he went left, and she went right. When Michael stood already near the door, he turned around, looked at the stranger's back. "May I ask your name?" Sure. My name is Adriana." The young man inserted the key into the keyhole and had not yet made a single turn as he turned around again. "Adriana, would you agree to meet me tonight? If you decide to be bold in the morning, you should stay that way." The young man decided. "I think it's kind of awkward." She was embarrassed. At that moment, the door opened and the friends saw each other. "I'm waiting for you all," the last words Michael said. Whether she heard or not, he does not know. The guy entered the apartment. Perhaps tomorrow he will get a new job, and today he will meet his future wife. Everything was good in his soul. Michael realized that if he chooses something in his life, it is forever. At 7:00 p.m., he left the apartment and headed to the place where he saw Adriana today. Michael pressed the call button one last time, and it took a long time for no one to open the door for him. Finally, a young girl appeared in the doorway. "Hi, who are you?" she asked. "Your neighbor. What's wrong? Are we flooding you?" No, it's okay. I met Adriana today. I made a date with her." "Came in," said the young man. "Come on in. She's been bugging me about it." The girl let him into the apartment and called her friend from the next room. Adriana was very surprised that Michael came by himself. Later, the young man found out that she had not heard when he made an appointment with her at 7:00. "Do you want to take me with you?" asked the one who opened the door for everyone today. "Yes, of course, Kathy. Come with us." Adriana looked at her. She didn't even ask Michael because she thought it was obvious, and Kathy would go with them too. Michael, of course, didn't really feel like going out with two girls, but there was no choice to either go with two or not go anywhere at all. They walked out of the apartment, down to the entryway. "To be honest, I'm not from around here. Everyone's gone out of town. They left me in charge of the landlady." Kathy started talking. "I asked Adriana to come over because I was bored," and Adriana was more and more silent. Apparently, she was attracting more attention from the young man. Michael planned to take the girls to the park and then take them to a cafe. By evening, all three of them were sitting, talking, laughing, as if they had known each other for a long time. "Would you like me to tell you my little secret?" Conspirator with whom Michael asked them in a whisper. "Do you have one?" Laughed the girls. "Of course." He told them how this morning he met two men in a cafe, and they promised him a position in their company. "I've heard of that company," Adriana told him. She herself was at a technical school, so she had only a vague idea of what Michael was doing. "Well, shall we go home?" asked the young man, because he had to get up early tomorrow. "Sure, let's go. Especially we live on the same floor," Kathy laughed. They went to their apartments. For tomorrow, Michael again scheduled a meeting with Adriana. Since morning, he had been preparing for no exams, no dates. He didn't prepare like this. The guy got out smoothly, combed his hair, put on the suit he only wore to prom, then went to that company to get a position. He was welcomed after seeing the guy's credentials, immediately offered a position as a specialist in the marketing department. When Michael was on his way back home, he planned that he would now stop by the girls' house, calling them to go for a walk. They would also sit in the cafe, celebrating his acceptance of the new jobs. The girls, of course, weren't expecting him, but when he reappeared at the door, they were surprised at his stern appearance. "Well, you're invited to celebrate my first positive response. I hope it's the last one on my resume." "He invited them," gladly replied Adriana, looking at her friend. "I don't have time today." Perhaps Kathy realized that the young people were in the midst of a relationship, or perhaps she really didn't have time for them. "But are you coming or not?" Michael was looking at Adriana. "Of course I'm going." She smiled guiltily, turned to Kathy. She went into the apartment briefly and came out to the young man. "Where shall we go?" he ventured, taking her hand. She shrugged her shoulders. "Don't be shy. Tell me." He himself did not understand why he liked this girl. But now, when they were standing next to each other, he realized that this was probably his future wife. They came to one of the cafes of the city, sat at a table. Michael ordered fruit and wine, some appetizers. "Tell me, do you have a dream?" Michael asked the girl. "I don't know." "Why?" He didn't understand. "I used to think that the most important thing was to find a man, get married, have children. And when I went to school, I realized that it's not so important," she sighed. "That's interesting." Michael sat down next to the girl. "It's just that in the countryside everything is easy," she said. "But in the city, what's in the city?" "Don't you get it, Michael?" He doesn't know. But it seemed to him that if you're determined and you want to achieve something, you have to go for it. "But you need a good job here with a profession like mine. It might not work out," sadly said Adriana. "That's exactly what a good husband is for, to provide for you while you stay at home," he told her. "How sneaky are you?" She laughed. "Why, is everything as it should be? The man earns the money and the woman finds a use for it." The young man muttered. "And if a woman wants more than what he makes," she squinted. He stared absent-mindedly at her. "I don't get it." "No, you don't think anything. It's just that some women don't want kids. They want a fur coat, travel, expensive phones," she laughed. "Oh yeah, that happens too." They continued to sit together. Everything was fine, but the day was coming to an end. They needed to head home. "I'll see you again," Michael asked. "If you suggested it, of course. I didn't want to keep anything from him." "Adriana." "I offer, of course," he told her. Paid the bill, and they walked towards the exit. Like yesterday, today they walked together because Adriana was still visiting Kathy. He walked her to her apartment. "So, see you tomorrow." "Yeah, let's see you tomorrow." She was about to go in. He pulled her to him and kissed her. "Michael, did I like you so much?" "I couldn't help myself." He told her the truth. "Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Auntie's gonna be worried." She sent him a kiss. Michael was very happy. First of all, he got his dream job today. Secondly, he'd met a wonderful girl. And thirdly, even if things weren't as rosy as he'd hoped, but sometimes you get triple the payoff for what you lose. The next day, he heard the elevator leaving. He figured Adriana and Kathy must have gone to school. It wasn't close for them to get there, so they had to get off early. He got ready, checked his briefcase, and only then went to work. He was well received by the staff. Now it remained only to get a foothold on this place to enter the university, and then it will be further seen. Michael did everything for this. He had a goal, and he was working towards it. Hi. He saw his girlfriends from afar. Do you still live here? He asked Adriana. I decided to spend one more night, and tomorrow I'll go to the dorm, she answered. You know, if you don't want to go to the dorm, just get your stuff out of there and move in with me, he told her. Michael, I can't do that, she replied. What's the big deal? If you don't want to, no one will bother you. Just live in peace, please. At least I'll know you're there for me. Safe and sound. He was speaking from the heart. Well, if that's really true, I guess I'll go along with it. Adriana looked at Kathy again. The next day, she drove to the technical school, then checked into the dorm. All that was left was to pack her things, to wait for Michael to come to pick her up in the evening. It was very pleasant. In Adriana's life, it was the first young man with whom she was so close, and she really liked him. But here was my apartment. He led her into the hallway. Wow, she looked it. Oh, don't mind me. It's my parents' apartment. They died when I was still in high school, and then when I got here. I moved here. I see, she smiled. What did you think of yourself just now? Wow, I'm so lucky. Finding a man and getting an apartment. He laughed. If you keep talking like that, I probably didn't move in with you, Adriana replied. That's it. Calm down. Everything will be fine. He came up to her, helped her through with her things. And presently, they entered the small room where Adriana was to live. Are you doing so well here? It's just like everyone else's. Come on. I've done practically nothing. Just a little redecorating. That's all I got to show for it. Even that was enough, she said. Now Adriana lived in the room, Michael in the hall. Naturally, they often crossed paths. The girl cooked. Met the young man with hot dishes. Kathy often came home to see her. Everything seemed to be going well. When the girl's studies were coming to an end, Michael decided to offer his girlfriend to stay with him. Neither did I understand Kathy. What's the big deal? Adriana's your friend. I'm your friend. Why wouldn't you be? I don't know. I'm kind of uncomfortable, the girl said, looking at her friend. What's uncomfortable about it? It's fine. We're with Michael. She took his hand together. And you will live in a small room, at least for the first time, until you get a job. You know, I don't think I'd say no to that. First of all, I don't have to carry my stuff all the way out there. Secondly, I didn't know you were a couple, but I was pretty sure you were. Kathy was happy. After graduation, the girls went to look for jobs. Why would you do that? I didn't understand. Michael, you don't understand. I have to get a job. Why did I study then? And what did you study for? He held out his hand for them to hand him their diplomas. He saw that the girls were cooks. They gave him what he wanted. You know, I have a friend who works at a company, and they need workers in the canteen all the time. Will you come? He asked them. If it's okay, yes, they didn't refuse. So now I call them. He sets a time and you go there. He said to the girls, Michael. Adriana ran up to him and started kissing him. Okay, don't get sentimental. Go first, in case he doesn't like something. The young man said sternly. But there was nothing in the girls that could not like. In a few days, they passed all the tests and started working in the canteen. Everything was fine. Michael did not feel any discomfort from having two girls living with him. On the contrary, he liked that his house was always cleaned and cooked by Adriana. Will you marry me? One day he asked the girl, Is that a proposal? She looked at him. At that moment they were lying in bed, getting ready for sleep. Can you consider it a proposal? But since it was, she was silent, raised her eyes to the ceiling. Why are you silent? Was he puzzled? No, of course not. I love you. She put her arms around him and started kissing him. So if you agree, we'll set the table tomorrow, and I'll invite a coworker. We'll sit and chat, Michael said to Adriana. Adriana was so happy inside that she couldn't explain it. "Michael, where are we getting married?" Adriana asked. The next day on his phone. "Well, I don't even know. My wife and her best friend work at a huge caterer. So where are we gonna play?" "I don't know." He was joking again. "I got it," she said into the phone. She immediately told her friend. She was very happy for her. "You're lucky, Adriana. What kind of man did you get?" "Does he do everything for you?" Kathy sighed when she heard that. "Well, don't be jealous. You'll find one too." "I didn't want to talk about it." "Adriana, where's the girl?" waving her hand and sighing. "Everyone needs to start getting ready." The bride-to-be was very worried that it wouldn't work out. She first decided to write everything in a notebook. She opened the first sheet, put the number 1. Of course, under that number was the dress. Then 2. That was the restaurant where the banquet would be held. Then she gnawed on the tip of her pen and thought, why this point at all? After all, everything has already been decided. Crossed it out. So she began to think about what to write about the numbers 2. Guest, so you have to write about the invitation. What do you write there? Kathy asked her. I don't know. I just wanted to have a clear plan. And my head's a mess. She looked at her friend. Come on, she sat down next to her. They actually wrote a little plan of action as they turned the page. They started listing the guests they would invite to the wedding. Wow. Adriana looked at the list. Do you think Michael won't approve? Asked her friend then. I don't know. Adriana shrugged, even though she believed she was loved and did everything for her. After all, a wedding is once and for a lifetime. When practically everything was scheduled, the girls heard the front doors slam. It was Michael coming home from work. He went into the kitchen, saw the two girlfriends writing something about solving impossible problems. He joked. Look what we wrote. Adriana handed him a notebook. Great. He ran his eyes over the lines. Are you the best? She stood up and hugged her husband-to-be. Kathy was so happy for her friend that she just kept quiet. She didn't say anything for fear of jinxing it. On the weekend, the girls went to see the dress. Michael gave money, kissed her on the cheek, and told Adriana to buy what she liked. Thank you, sweetheart. She realized how much she loved this man. Choosing a dress was not as easy as they had imagined it would be. Adriana had always trusted her inner voice. When she wore the first dress, she liked it so much that she didn't want to try on another. But Kathy talked her into it. You what? One isn't a choice. What if the other one is better? She said that a few times. In the end, Adriana tried on so many dresses, but bought the first one anyway. I can just imagine how beautiful you're going to be. They left the store and walked down the street. Do you know how helpful you are? I don't even know how to thank you. Adriana turned around. Let's have a party tonight, suggested the girlfriend. Why not? Adriana didn't object. At first they wanted to do everything at home because the girls knew how to cook very well. Then they talked together and decided that it would be better to sit in a cafe. They decided not to invite anyone, just the three of them. They always got together like that when they wanted to have a little fun. The girls got dressed up. They waited for Michael to come home. And when he came home, did you tell him everything? Did you book a table at the cafe? Michael asked. Why do you think everything will be busy? Adriana was surprised. Who knows? We should do it just in case. He was thoughtful. All right, I'll call you now. Went Kathy to the phone. Tonight was a very positive evening. Friends were sitting around the table, talking, discussing some of the aspects of the wedding, planning what they were going to do next. I should probably look for an apartment. I didn't ask, Kathy stated a fact. Why are you running ahead of the train? No one's chasing you. We'll see. Everything will be fine. Don't get upset, Michael said. Exactly, Auntie. Wait. A little supported the future husband, Adriana. Today they were coming home. They were laughing, joking. And when they got there, they realized how tired everyone was. And tomorrow they had to go to work. But Kathy said goodnight to the couple and went to her room. Come on, Michael said goodnight to you too. And they went to their room too. Everything was going great. There were no excesses. Everyone was getting ready for the upcoming wedding. Adriana and Kathy continued to work, but at the same time they were doing everything they could to make it great. Kathy, look at the shoes. Adriana showed her friend in the store window the shoes she liked. Yes, they are beautiful, but look how much they cost. The girl was telling her, you don't think it's even worth talking about them, Michael. Adriana looked at her. I don't. If you want to, you can. What if something comes over him and he'll approve? Of course, if they were black or brown, you could go out with them. But with white ones, Adriana was silent. She wanted those shoes so badly. They came home and started cooking dinner. Everything was the same as always. In the evening, Michael came, and they all sat down at the table. And as they started to eat, Kathy looked at Michael. I know the politician saw those shoes today. They're amazing. But they cost the same, Kathy said. At that moment, Adriana froze too. She had already decided that she would not say anything to Michael. Firstly, because she knew he would agree to her every whim. And secondly, they cost so much. And soon it would be their joint budget. Why didn't she say anything to me? And why didn't she say anything? Michael turned to his bride-to-be. I wouldn't mind having such shoes, but I realized that it would be a big hole in our budget. She began to justify herself. I don't want to hear anything. I want my wife to be the most beautiful. Michael told her, maybe we shouldn't do it after all. Adriana looked at Kathy at that moment. Somewhere in the back of her mind, she was accusing her of having spoken out. So tomorrow, you and Kathy go to the store together after work and buy these shoes. Put Michael's money on the table. Okay, but maybe they don't fit me yet. Adriana took the money and put it in her purse. And then, when she and her friend were alone, she told her 10 more times that she was wrong to tell her about Adriana's secret. Come on, what are you, a friend? I knew right away you weren't gonna say anything. The shoes are really nice, Kathy smiled. Finally, the celebration came. Beautiful dress, shoes, though the bride was dazzling. Next to Kathy's girlfriend, who looked every bit as good. The groom in all black stood looking at his beloved. At the registry office, they exchanged rings, said to each other, yes, what they had waited so long for had taken place. But that's it. You're not going anywhere from me now. Michael pulled her to him and kissed her hard. Adriana was also very happy. She felt in her gut that this man was her destiny. Now they also continued to live together as a threesome. Until now, it didn't bother anyone. And then Kathy herself began to realize what was superfluous in this apartment. She started looking for a place of her own. Kathy, do you want to leave us? Adriana asked her one day, what am I supposed to do with you guys here? I feel like I'm torturing you. She was telling the truth. I don't know. I think you are. Adriana answered without embarrassment. She was so comfortable having her best friend around. Together, they walked to and from work. There was just one thing. Adriana was already married, and Kathy didn't even have a friend. But one didn't say anything about it, and the other didn't think anything of it. Michael, do you know anyone you might know? Maybe we could introduce Kathy to someone. Did Adriana ask you once at dinner? You know, there's no one, he said. That's too bad. Adriana smiled and looked at Kathy. Why did you tell him that? A friend was talking tonight. What if he had made a good friend? We could have introduced you. Maybe something would have worked out. Adriana told her, you know what? I'll find my own man, said Kathy. One day they were at work, and a younger man came into the cafeteria. He came up to the serving counter, taking a long look at something. Kathy noticed it and went over to him. Can I help you? She asked. Yeah, you know, I was driving by, so I thought I'd stop. I'd never eaten in a place like this before, but I couldn't take it anymore. He looked at her, smiled. Wrinkles immediately bled all over his face. Sure, let's have the first one. She walked over to a large tank in which there was soup. And what do you have for the first borscht? Solnik. She waited for his decision. Okay, let's, since the Solnik agreed the man. The girl poured him a deep bowl of soup, then offered him the second. He refused the side dish, took only the meat, and then put the compote on the tray, paid and went to the table. Kathy saw that he had forgotten his cutlery and napkins. She took them and went to him. You didn't thank you. You are very kind and helpful. The girl, replied the guest. Kathy smiled and went to her workplace. The guest ate, and after turning in the dishes, went over to Kathy to thank her again. Not a week later, the man was back in the dining room. Now he came not just for fun, but in a strict suit and with flowers. He smiled and looked at Kathy. Hello, it was you driving by again. She walked up to him. No, beautiful. I've come to see you. My name is David. I'd like to know your name. He asked her. My name is Kathy, she answered, and she was very shy, because all the canteen workers came out to see this concert. She looked back at those who were watching it. Her cheeks were aching. She thanked the man, took the bouquet, and stood there not knowing what to do next. Why are you so shy, child? Don't be. Tonight I invite you to the restaurant to get to know each other better. He touched her shoulder. Thank you. I will definitely be there, she replied, and saw Adriana walking towards her. Hello, David greeted her. Good afternoon, she replied. After that, Kathy introduced them to each other once more, and that was the end of it. Kathy, you see, I told you that everything will be fine in your life. Look at the man paying attention. The girl said, and looked in that direction, where David had just gone. Adriana, he's twice my age. Kathy was looking at her. So what? He's a solid man, not some guy from the diner. Adriana didn't understand her. Yeah, he took me to a restaurant tonight. Kathy looked at the flowers again. Well, go and don't even think about it. The girl was happy for her friend. As they walked home, they only discussed what Kathy would wear on their date tonight. Remember the blue dress? Adriana said. Yeah, but it's really short. Do you think it would be okay if I wore it? Kathy said, and turned to her friend. Of course it's okay. You look really cute in it. They spent the rest of the drive discussing the rest of the accessories. When they got home, Kathy immediately took a shower and went to change. Now that she was ready, the girl really did look like candy. While in the hallway putting on her shoes, Michael walked in. Wow, you look beautiful, Michael said. Don't flatter me. Kathy lowered her eyes. How flattering is that? It's really true. He took Adriana's hand and drew her to him. They stood and watched as the girlfriend left the apartment. Now tell me, he smiled. Wait, come on. Go wash your hands. We'll have dinner. I'll tell you everything there. She sent him into the bath. When they were in the kitchen, Adriana told her husband everything. Not to say that he experienced any happy emotions, but he was happy for his wife's friend that everything had worked out so well. She had nothing to worry about right now. If David really liked her, then really everything would be fine. At this time, Kathy had already arrived at the restaurant. She immediately noticed David, who got up from the table and went to meet her. He had a bouquet of flowers in his hands again. Hello, beautiful, he said to her. He kissed her on the cheek, took her hand, and led her to the table. They sat across from each other. David had already ordered, so now he filled the glasses and raised his own to drink to the girl. Please, please, don't be shy. If you don't like something, tell her right away, he asked her. No, it's fine. They clinked glasses, bought some champagne, and started eating. Do you like it? David asked her. When Kathy tasted a piece of crab and its meat. Yes, thank you very much. It melts in your mouth, she smiled. David realized that the girl worked as a chef, so she must know a lot about food. I really wanted to please her tonight. The evening went great. They talked for a long time, and then David left his car and went to see the girl on foot. It was cool outside. They walked and talked about different things. When they were almost there, David stopped the girl and asked her if she would agree to meet him again tomorrow. Of course, she smiled for the hours they had spent together. It seemed to her that they had known each other for more than a day, and his age was not as noticeable now as it had been at first. "But I'll come and get you tomorrow. May I?" he asked her again. Of course, she answered seriously, but inside she was jubilant, as if some little child was happy that he had been bought a new toy or something. She walked into the apartment and saw that the door to Michael and Adriana's room was already closed. She didn't bother them, went to her room, and went over in her mind what they had talked to David about today. She decided for herself that now she would talk to this man. And if he was really as nice as she had originally thought, she would probably stay with him. Naturally, in the morning, when they woke up and went to work together with Adriana, the girlfriend had 1,000 questions that when and how Kathy told her everything, and about the fact that today they have a meeting again. The girl was glad that her friend had found a man for herself. In the evening, David did indeed, as promised, pick up Kathy. They just drove around the night city. He showed her around, told her what to do and how to do it. And over the weekend, he invited her to come to his house. "David, can I come? Not alone, but with friends," she asked him, because on some level she was afraid. But at the same time, it was uncomfortable that he invited her alone, and she would come with someone else. "Sure, we'll sit, have a drink together, get to know each other," he agreed. When Kathy was home, she had already informed everyone about it. And on Saturday, the friends drove to the address that David had left Kathy. Wow! Adriana got out of the car and saw the huge house they had been brought to. Kathy didn't know anything either. She stood there with her mouth open looking at all this wealth. "So what are you standing here for? Come on in." David came out to meet them. Everyone went into the house. David met Michael. The table was already set. They sat down and started talking about different things. The company was very cordial today. No one was judging anyone. No one was jealous of anyone. Everything was going great. From that point on, Michael and Adriana, David and Kathy all began to socialize together. They would gather at David's house very often because it was outside of town, and it was very convenient. By New Year's Eve, David got tired of Kathy coming to him as guests, so he asked her to move in with him. I don't even know. Inside she was both happy and confused, but in the end she agreed. And they celebrated the most important holiday together. Michael and Adriana were left to live together. And the girl began to think that perhaps it is time for them to think about a child. The man was not against it at all. He loved children and wanted them just at first. Kathy was together with them. He was building a career. His wife was building a career. And since she didn't talk about it, he thought as it worked out, it worked out. David and Kathy. After they started living together, they didn't wait long and formalize their relationship. They didn't want to have a big wedding. They just called some friends and sat together in a restaurant. Adriana was happy for her friend. They continued to see each other on weekends. Soon her friend told Adriana that she was quitting her job. It was David's decision. "How is your relationship?" Adriana asked her because she was curious. "You know, I can see that he treats me very well, but I feel like he just wanted a wife," Kathy said. "So he has an au pair?" Adriana was surprised. "Yes, he does. But now we're traveling to different events. He dresses me from head to toe, introduces me to everyone. I think he does it to make other men jealous that he has such a young wife," Kathy said. "Sad. Why so sad, friend? It's good when other men pay attention, and David will love you more for it." She didn't understand the girl's regrets. "You know, I'm glad that David asked me to marry him, and that I'm living in his house now. We're good, but there's nothing inside. Yeah, he's cute. That's all there is," Kathy said sadly. 2 years went by like that. Sometimes, when Adriana called Michael to visit Kathy, he refused because David was not at home at that moment. But his wife would persuade him, and he would go. And David wouldn't say anything about us spending time all together. He'd ask a lot. "Michael, you're standing with him, aren't you?" "It's okay," Kathy reassured him, because she knew David never minded. When friends came to visit, one day when Adriana came home from work and her husband wasn't there yet, she felt sick to her stomach. Since this morning, she had felt as if she had poisoned herself. She felt dizzy. She even took her temperature a couple times, but it was nothing like that. When David came home, she told him about it. "Adriana, do you think you're expecting a baby? Have you looked at her?" "You know, I didn't even think about it," his wife told him. "I mean, it's been so long and still no pregnancy. And now that it's happening, she didn't think about it. Do you want me to run to the drugstore right now?" Michael asked her, "If you don't mind." At this point, she felt sick again. She went to the kitchen and drank some water. When Adriana returned to the hallway, she saw that Michael was gone. And a few minutes later, he was standing in the hallway already with a box in his hands. "Here, go check one today. If it doesn't show anything, you do the same." Tomorrow morning, he put everything in her hands. Adriana went to the bathroom. When the test was ready, the 2 red stripes glowed as if it was a magic wand and not a pregnancy test. She came out of the restroom, showed everything to Michael. He was very happy at that moment. It had been 5 years since the wedding. And now that they were pretty sure they were having a baby, they were both happy. The next day on her lunch break, Adriana excused herself from work and drove to the hospital. She wanted to make sure that this was indeed the case. After examination, the doctor confirmed that Adriana was indeed expecting a baby, but warned her that her body was very weak and she needed to take great care of her health. Of course, I will do everything. After all, we have been waiting for this miracle for so long," Adriana said at the time. The first thing she did was to call Kathy. "Are you expecting a baby?" She answered her, "Yeah, aren't you excited?" Adriana couldn't understand why her friend sounded like that. "I don't even know what to tell you," she replied and hung up. Strange. Adriana looked at the phone, put it in her bag, and went back to work to finish the day. In the evening, she told Michael everything, both about the baby and the fact that she had acted strangely. "We need to go to her to support her husband said then. "Well, if you insist, we can go." Adriana agreed with him. Today, the 3 of them sat together again. David was delayed somewhere. Kathy was annoyed. She kept saying things about David, about Michael, comparing them. Adriana didn't understand what was going on with her friend when they went home. Adriana was silent at first and then turned to Michael. "Have you noticed something going on with Kathy?" she asked him. "Yes." He wouldn't say anything. "That's all." Surprised his wife. "Perhaps she's having those days of yours," nodded the man's head. "Well, yes, perhaps," Adriana agreed with him. She walked to work very carefully now. Michael often drove her. Her stomach often ached, and she felt dizzy. So Adriana went to the doctors now and then. When she was 3 months pregnant, the doctor suggested she go into labor. "Oh, really?" "No, I won't go to the hospital. At home, everything is calm." At work, too, she told the doctor calmly. "Do you realize that you could lose the baby at any moment?" That's what the doctor said to her. "Okay, let's make a deal. If I get worse, I will come right away and stay here with you." So Adriana compromised. So they made a deal, and Adriana went home. When she entered the apartment, she saw Kathy's shoes in the hallway. "Hey, what are you doing here?" She came into the kitchen. "Why can't I come over to my friend's house?" She asked her overnight. "Why can't you?" "Yes, you can. I'll make some tea and we'll sit down," Adriana said. They sat in the kitchen. The apartment was silent. Adriana was surprised that Michael didn't come out to see them. She hadn't realized he wasn't even home. Michael left. Kathy told her when she realized she was expecting him to come into the kitchen. "Gone how?" "Gone where?" Adriana didn't understand the store. "I don't know. You should know better. You're the one living with him." Kathy sat there twirling a teaspoon in her hands. I don't get it. I'm going to call them. She took out her cell phone and started dialing her husband's number, but he didn't answer. What if he has a mistress? Kathy asked her friend. What are you talking about? What mistress? We're about to have a baby. She touched her stomach. Why? Is he always working late? What does he tell you? And you believe everything. It's good for him to go to his mistress. The wife believes it. Her friend kept talking. Kathy, shut up. Adriana asked her. All right. It's my business to warn, she said. She got up and walked towards the exit. Did you come here on purpose to tell me all this? Adriana looked after her. Come on, calm down. You have a nice family. Everything will be fine for now. And she left the apartment. Adriana went back to the kitchen. She took out her phone again and dialed Michael again. She couldn't understand what had happened. She was so worried that her blood pressure had gone up. And after another hour, she started bleeding. The girl called an ambulance. The paramedics came and took her away. When she was already in the hospital, I realized that something terrible had happened. The doctor came into the room. He approached Adriana, took her hand. What's wrong with the baby? She asked. The doctor shook his head negatively. I told you that you should stay with us. Why didn't you listen to me? He squeezed her hand, stood up, and turned away. Don't tell me. She was silent, and then she started to cry. Don't be upset. You're still young. You'll be fine, he told her. But why did it happen to me? Adriana squeezed her eyes shut. Tears were flowing from her eyes, so that it was impossible to stop them. Did you call your husband? He asked her. Yes, but he didn't answer for some reason. Adriana continued to cry. Well, stay here. You need to rest. And then make sure you call him again. The doctor left the room. Adriana was alone. She didn't know what to think. What if something had happened to Michael? What if he was in an accident? What if he'd been hit by a car? Where could he have gone tonight? Until the morning, the girl didn't close her eyes. She just couldn't sleep. And in the morning, her husband called her. Where are you? What's wrong with you? He spoke excitedly. Michael, where have you been? She asked him in a stricken voice. Tell me where you are, and I'll come and tell you everything. Worried, he said. I'm at the hospital. Our baby is gone, she replied, in a very sad voice. I'm on my way. He hung up the phone. When Michael arrived at Adriana's house, he told her that when Kathy arrived, she told him about David needing help to go, how not to help a friend. He dropped everything and went to David's. There was really a lot to do there. His phone was still in his bag, and he dialed her as soon as he'd arrived. It made sense, Adriana said, because she didn't care much about Michael's whereabouts right now. Their baby just wasn't there. Michael sat beside his wife. He didn't know what to say, what to do. There was only one thought running through his mind: regret that he wasn't home. It made the bullet so upset. He tried to speak some soothing words to her, but the woman was unsuccessful. Tears rolled from her eyes. There was no point in saying anything. I will need to go to David and Kathy again tonight, Michael told her. I don't want to hear that name again. Do you hear me? She punched him in the chest with her fist. What's wrong? He didn't understand anything, Michael. I may not be able to get pregnant again. This pregnancy was an accident, and the next one is not a sure thing. She was telling him. What are you talking about? Of course it'll work out. Couldn't calm down, Michael. Okay, we'll see, she said and wiped away a tear that had slipped traitorously down her cheek. When can you go home? Her husband asked her. I don't know. The doctor said I'm feeling better now. I guess we can go, Adriana said. They drove home in silence. They didn't feel like talking at all. Michael blamed himself for everything. Adriana fought back about the lost baby. When they were already home, Adriana just went to the bedroom, lay down on the bed, turned her back to the wall, and lay like that for a long time. There were so many thoughts in her head that she couldn't do anything. "Sweetheart, take a pill." Michael came into the room. "I don't want any pills." Without turning around himself, said Anna. He realized that their life was divided into before and after. He had always been a decent family man, coming home, helping his wife. And this happened here. "Tell me, why? Why did she stay here? To wait for me, to bring me home. She told me about your mistresses, something else. What's it all about?" Adriana turned to her husband. She was screaming and waving her arms. "I don't know." He put his hands to his chest. You don't know. Then I'll find out." At this point, she became very dizzy and sat down on the bed. Michael sighed heavily. He went to the kitchen. He realized he was annoying his wife with his presence, and for about a month the couple just did not speak. Adriana knew that her husband went to David, helped them, but she could not even think about it, because in her head there was only one time. Kathy had told her about it. So she knows something. So she's seen something. What if they're all meeting together? But calling her friend was the one thing she didn't want to call. She blamed her for what had happened to her. It's been a year. Nothing in Adriana and Michael's relationship had changed. Just as they had grown distant from each other, they couldn't get any closer. She didn't trust him. "Adriana, don't you think we should change things up?" Somehow Michael sat down next to her. What exactly was she looking at him for? "We used to be so good together." And now he stopped talking and looked at her. "Do you know what Kathy told me about you?" Adriana finally decided to have this conversation. "What did she tell you? Was it interesting, Michael, that you had a mistress?" She spoke quickly, because she didn't want to bring it up again. "Adriana, and you believe it?" he wondered. "Why wouldn't I?" She lowered her eyes and did not look at her husband. "What a mistress! You're the love of my life. I met you and realized that you would be my wife. And now, no matter what anyone offers me, I will never trade you for anyone else." He hugged her. Adriana. She missed her husband's caresses so much that she buried herself in his chest and cried. "It's true," she said through her sobs. "Of course it's true." He pulled her tighter against him. From that moment on, life in the family began to get better. Although Adriana knew that Michael was still communicating with David, and she did not tell him anything about it. A few more years passed. At some point, Adriana's cell phone rang. She looked at the screen and saw an unfamiliar number. "Hello," she answered the phone. "Adriana, please come over." She heard Kathy's voice. "Why?" Immediately, she changed from grace to anger. David was dead. Her best friend had once told her what had happened. Adriana really didn't understand. Yes, David was a man of age, but not old enough to die. "I don't know. The hospital called me, told me to come over." Kathy was crying into the phone. "Hang on, I'll be right there," Adriana said and hung up. Just for a second. She thought about whether to do it or not, but being responsive to people trumped everything else. So she drove to her girlfriend's house. It turned out that as David was driving to work, a car pulled into the oncoming lane. He swerved the steering wheel. The car flipped a couple times, and when the emergency services arrived, all they had to do was record the time and date of death. "What a horror," Adriana said. "How happy were we with him?" So many years of sitting and rereading Kathy. Adriana, though, still hadn't forgiven her, but now she sat and comforted Kathy. Everything would be all right. "You'll see," she told her. And then there was the funeral. Michael helped with everything, never left Kathy's side. Even afterwards, when they got home, he told Adriana to go and see Kathy, to see how she was feeling. "Did you go with me to see your wife?" "No, go alone," she told him. Now Adriana had her own friends, her own interests, different company. She hadn't socialized with Kathy, and she didn't want to now. Every weekend, Michael would pack up, drive to his friend's house. He'd do the bath. He'd fix the gate. Every time he had something to do to help the girl. "Let's celebrate New Year's Eve together, like old times." One day, Michael suggested to his wife, "Michael, enough already." She asked him, "What did I say?" The man didn't understand. You realize that because of this person I lost a child, and I will never have children again. Why do you want me to start talking to her again? Adriana didn't understand. Adriana, life goes on. Things change. You have to be kinder and forgive people. He wanted to cheer her up somehow. I don't want to forgive anyone. Why hasn't she called or written in all these years? Why was she so cruel that night? Why did she say all those things to me? She started twiddling her thumbs and listing. Adriana, why did you believe all that? You should have believed me, not her. Michael lost his temper too. Go to your Kathy and celebrate New Year's Eve with her. His wife was mad at him. Okay, everybody, we have to stop. We're gonna have another fight. Michael took control of the situation. Right after New Year's Eve, Michael said he had to go to work, that everyone is on vacation and you will work. His wife didn't understand. I promise, I'll make a couple calls, sign some papers, and go straight home. He told her, okay, let's just keep it short. She kissed him goodbye, and he left the apartment. Adriana went to the kitchen. She was preparing dinner, waiting for her husband's imminent return, but everything was already ready. Michael was still gone. She sat on a chair looking out the window. It was snowing in big flakes. Adriana began to remember how they had met Michael, how things had started for them. She smiled. It was starting to get dark outside, and her husband was still gone. Adriana cleared everything off the table, turned off the light in the kitchen, and went to her room. She turned on the TV. A movie was playing, but the woman couldn't concentrate on the plot. She kept thinking, where could her husband be? She kept thinking that maybe something had happened to him, but then she would probably get a call from the hospital. And then suddenly one terrible thought came into her head. What if he had gone to his mistress? Wouldn't he? Today is January 1st. Yesterday he spent the whole day with her. They congratulated each other, and today he should congratulate her. Adriana began to think to herself. She screwed herself up so much that she just turned off the TV. Light went to the bedroom and went to bed thinking about what her husband was doing wrong. She woke up in the morning, saw that her husband wasn't around. He smirked. Oh well, she's got you so well drawn to her that you don't even come home anymore, she said out loud. She didn't want to think about Michael anymore. She went to the kitchen and made herself some coffee. As she sat at the table and drank it, various thoughts came into her head. Even though she didn't want to think about Michael, she couldn't do it. That was fine. But she was also talking to her lover to herself as she went to the bathroom and decided to start the laundry. Adriana sorted out the dirty laundry, put something in the machine, something left for later, because you cannot wash white color together. Started the machine. I went to my room, sat on the couch, and decided to call my husband's partner to ask if he really had to go to work yesterday. Hello, Sam, hi. She started to speak when Adriana answered on the other end. Hello. He was surprised by her call. Listen, did Michael have to go to work yesterday? She asked him. Yes. They sent us new contracts before the new year. He had to sign them. He didn't have any other work. Why did something happen? He asked. No, nothing's wrong. I just wanted to see if my husband was cheating on me, said Adriana. She hung up the phone, and at that moment she realized that Michael was not cheating on her. But where could he be now? Here Adriana started to get nervous. She got up, went to her room. Her wife didn't know what she wanted there. But at some point, when she was going through the papers, she saw her husband's passport. I don't understand. She opened it. He'd gone to work without papers, without everything. I guess he really only had to sign something. It was no fun now. She dialed one hospital, another. But the man she was looking for was nowhere to be found. It was late in the evening. So Adriana decided to dial Sam again. Sam, I'm sorry to bother you again. But you know, Michael left for work yesterday. He said he wouldn't be long. And it's been 2 days, and he's still not here. She told him. Like he hasn't been in touch with me, the man mumbled. What do you think I should do? Go to the police. She asked him for advice. You know, I'm not an advisor in this case, but I think it's worth a try. You're the wife, after all, the man told her. Adriana hung up. She still hoped that Michael would come back and decided to wait until morning before calling or doing anything else. But when it was morning and Michael was still not home, she did not think about anything. The woman gathered her papers, his papers, drank her coffee, got dressed, and went straight to the police station. On the way, she began to think that what if he is now at the mistress? What if he is somewhere else? And she as a fool will come and start to tell that her husband is missing, and he will be found in 2 days, and that she will be laughed at. Had she stopped? No, I'm not going anywhere, she told herself. But in another moment she thought, what if something really happened to him, and she did nothing now? What would they say later? She moved on. She was admitted to the station. The investigator listened to her, handed her a paper to write a statement. When, with whom, to where, what he looked like. It all had to be written. There Adriana diligently wrote out the letters while her mind was again filled with thoughts. The application was accepted. They promised to do a search right away. But no matter how many times Adriana called the department, they couldn't tell her anything. Michael was now neither dead nor alive. He couldn't be found just anywhere. What am I supposed to do? She closed her eyes with her hands. The woman sighed deeply. It had been 6 days since we had been away from home. The phone lay in front of her. It was silent. Adriana stared at it for a long time. Then she picked it up and decided to dial Kathy's number. Hello, Adriana. Hi. What's up? She heard the greeting on the phone. Kathy, do you know what happened? Adriana was silent. A lump rose in her throat because now she knew she was going to cry. She couldn't continue the conversation. Well, talk. I'm listening. Kathy got worried on the other end of the line. Michael is missing, she said to her. Missing? Gone where? Her friend started asking questions. That's the thing. I don't know where he's gone. At first I thought he was with his mistress, but then I realized he would have let me know anyway, said he was leaving or something. And then I went and filed a police report, but they couldn't do anything either. Can you believe it? On the morning of January 1st, he just left for work and never came back. The woman spoke through her sobs. Yes, how can that be? Michael is a grown man. If something had happened to him, had he been in an accident or just died, you would have been notified, Kathy said. I'm sure I'm sorry I called you. I just didn't know what to do, Adriana told her. So wait for me at home and I'll be right over. Kathy hung up, and Adriana thought she should let her come over. It would be easier with the two of them than alone. Kathy was at her place an hour and a half later. They sat in the kitchen, both of them silent, drinking tea, no conversation flowing. Then Adriana told Kathy to go home. They weren't going to solve anything anyway. Well, don't worry. I hope they find your Michael. It's not the 90s. There's no racketeering. No one's moving anyone out. Kathy headed for the exit. She looked at Adriana and left the apartment. Adriana was lying in bed, but there was no sleep. Then she thought since the police couldn't handle this case, she should hire a private investigator. She had the money, so there would be no problem with that. She found a man in the classifieds who could do it. She arranged to meet him at a cafe. Hello, tell me what happened. They were sitting at a table. The man had a notebook in front of him and was ready to take notes. Adriana told him everything she knew. All she knew was that her husband had gone to work and never came home. Are you sure he hasn't found someone else? The detective asked her. You know, I think if he had someone, at least he came for his things. Well, he'd definitely come back for his passport. Adriana told him. Oh, I see. He wrote everything down, took Adriana's coordinates, put his hand on hers, and asked her not to worry. After that, she went home. There was only one thing left to do. Wait. There was nothing she could do on her own. The New Year holidays were coming to an end. She had to go to work. There was still no news. Ethan kept calling Adriana, finding out about mutual friends and girls she might have seen in pictures or something, or maybe she suspected someone herself. Kathy said everything she knew. "I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you something now, but I can't not do it," he once said to Adriana. "Yes, of course. Ask anything I know. I'll tell you." She was ready for it. "You told me that he used to go to your ex-girlfriend Kathy's house all the time, helping her with her chores. Couldn't he go to her place now?" he asked Adriana. "Oh, shut up, will you?" Adriana. She wanted to tell him that Michael would never do such a thing. And then she wondered why he'd gone to her every weekend after David died. What did they do there? She doesn't know that. What if they were having an affair? Kathy was always jealous of her, said she had a good husband. "Hello, Adriana, can you hear me?" Ethan said. Yes, I can hear you. I'm just thinking," she replied. So, was she pondering? Was Ethan wondering? You know, when Kathy's husband died, Michael used to go to see her all the time, saying he was helping out around the house. And now, I don't even know what to tell you. She didn't want to say anything bad about her husband, but at the same time, she had her doubts. "Okay, I heard you. I just needed to know if he had a reason to go there." He started to say goodbye, but it was goodbye. Waiting for news, Adriana dropped the call. And now she had something else on her mind. Could Michael have cheated on her with Kathy? Again and again, the thought came back to her mind. She thought about it, but couldn't come up with anything. A day later, Ethan called again. "Adriana, can I come over? Are you at home?" he asked her. "Yes, of course, come over." She was glad that he had some news. Adriana put the kettle on, took out some cookies on the table. She was ready to meet the detective. He arrived, said hello. They went straight into the kitchen. "But what do you have some news?" Adriana didn't know what to think anymore. She called the police. They too were just throwing up their hands. She hoped to get some results here. "Look, I don't know how you're gonna take this information right now, but let me talk. Listen to the end, and then we'll draw conclusions together." Ethan asked her. "Yes, of course I'm listening," she told him. "I asked you, Kathy, for a reason. When you said you used to socialize, you were family friends. I decided to observe her for a while. She's been acting very strangely. She hardly leaves the house, doesn't turn on the lights, even though I know she's inside. Maybe you could talk to her openly," Ethan asked her. "I don't understand what you're getting at. You think Michael is living with her, and they are cheating on me together," she concluded. "From what the PI said, no, I'm not saying anything. I'm just very curious as to why this is happening." The detective asked a question. "You see, there was an incident many years ago that made me feel very bad. After that, Kathy and I didn't speak to each other until after her husband died. And then I can't say we had the warm friendship that we used to have. And now I can't just call her up and say something like that," Adriana said. She sat there, squeezing her fingers so hard they were already red. "Okay, if you're still talking to her like that, maybe you and I can go to her place, see what's going on with her and talk." Ethan talked her into it. "If you know something, you can talk on the line." Tired of listening to him walk around. "Yeah, around. I don't know anything yet. I'm just guessing," he told Adriana. "Good. We can go to her place tonight," the woman said and poured more tea into the mugs. "Great, that's what we'll do," Ethan said. They talked some more with Adriana before drinking tea, and the man headed for the exit. "Thank you for taking so much of your time and for doing this." The woman spoke earnestly. "Wait, thank you, nothing has happened yet." He looked at her. Adriana returned to the kitchen and began clearing the table. She kept going over the conversation with Ethan in her head. Why had he started following Kathy in the first place? Why hadn't he thought that someone in the office might be involved in Michael's disappearance? And then another crazy thought popped into Adriana's head. What if Michael was on his way home and he'd been kidnapped? "That's enough of that kind of thinking," she said to herself. Adriana went to her room and turned on the TV to the channel where singers were performing. She listened to familiar songs and sang along. The woman realized that there was a disaster in her family. A man was missing, but she couldn't help it. All sorts of silly things came into her head. Finally, the evening came. Adriana was ready. All she was waiting for was for Ethan to come and pick her up. When the phone rang, she even flinched. "Did you pull up?" She saw his name on the screen. "Yes, I'm waiting for you," he said. At that moment, Adriana turned off the lights, opened the door, and hurried downstairs. What was going to happen now? She couldn't even guess. She could only hope that it was not what Ethan and Michael thought it was. Not her friends. It was cold outside. So Adriana quickly got into the car, where the heater was working. It seems to have gone only 2 meters, and already about another put it. "Let's go." Ethan turned to her. "Yes." She nodded decisively. The car started up. Pleasant music was playing in the cabin. The men and women were silent. Adriana didn't think about anything now that Ethan was beside her. She knew this road like the back of her hand. They should turn right here and then take a sharp left. She and Michael had come here before. So many times, they couldn't even count. "Almost there," she said. The fence of Kathy's house was already in sight. They pulled up just as Ethan had said. There were no lights in the windows, even though it was still late. Adriana had the good idea to call Kathy. "Wait, don't drive. It's too close," she asked Ethan. She took out her phone and her purse and dialed her friend's number. "Hello," she heard a voice. It wasn't Sleepy. "Hi," Adriana said calmly. "Where are you now?" "At home. I'm a little sick." The girl's voice changed immediately. She started to sing a little. "I see. And I wanted you to come to me." Annoyed, and said Adriana, "I'm sorry, there is no way today." Kathy said, "Okay, see you later," challenged Adriana. "But what did I tell you? I saw she was home." "But why doesn't she turn on the lights? Maybe she doesn't want anyone to know she's out there hinting at men again. Let's go and ask her ourselves." Adriana's about to get out of the car. "We'll be right there." He stopped her. They were at the fence, got out of the car. Adriana rang the bell. Inside, no one moved. There was total silence. Or maybe she tricked me, that the woman at home turned detective. I don't think so. He showed her what? The one that had just gone down on the second floor. By opening it, "I know you're home," shouted Adriana then. They stood outside the gate. It was so cold that their feet were quickly starting to freeze. Adriana started pounding on the gate, but it was having no effect. "Kathy, if you don't open it now, we'll come back tomorrow." But not alone, but with the police. The man decided not to be shy either. At that moment, the light on the first floor came on. A few more minutes passed, and the lock beeped, alerting that the doors were open. A woman and a man entered. Ethan looked around. There was nothing suspicious. The front door to the house was open as well. "Kathy," they walked in and stopped. She stood there looking at them. Only now she pretended she had just woken up. "What's going on?" she asked and yawned. "No need to pretend. Where's Michael?" Immediately went on the offensive. Adriana, "What are you like, Michael? What are you talking about?" Did not understand her friend. "My Michael. You have it." Adriana, everything was already shaking. She could not calmly watch the concert that her friend was playing out. Ever since high school, Adriana remembered how well Kathy was at playing different roles. "Michael who? What are you doing breaking in on me in the middle of the night? You're threatening the police. I can call them too and tell them you broke in." My friend went on the offensive. "Okay, you don't want to tell me. I'll find him." She went inside Adriana's house. She knew every corner of the place. "Adriana, come on, there's no one here." Kathy looked after her, but it was useless. The woman would do anything to find her husband. Adriana went to the kitchen to the guest bedroom, then went up to the second floor. There were more rooms there, but she looked in them too. As a result, The house was glowing like a Christmas tree now because there were lights on in all the windows. Where is he? Adriana came close to her friend. She could believe everything now. I told you he wasn't here. Kathy stood her ground. Well, then can I ask you a question? Ethan approached him. When was the last time you saw Michael? Ethan asked the lady of the house. I don't know, sometime before New Year's. Shrugged. Clearly, we're not getting anywhere here. He sat down on the couch. Adriana came over and sat down next to him. She folded her arms across her chest and began to think that what they'd done was stupid. Coming over and breaking into a man's house. Or maybe you really are sick. Did they come at her with fists? Wait. Adriana stood up suddenly from her seat and walked over to the fireplace. What was Ethan tensing up over there? Why is she the one who picked up Michael's watch from the shelf? I don't know. Kathy was getting nervous. I do. It's my husband's wristwatch. The detective looked at it. So what? He came to see me so often. He could have left it at any time. Kathy couldn't stand anymore. Did she crouch on the step? No, he couldn't have left them anywhere. Remember the day he started work? Well, that's when that watch was given to him by the manager who got him there. He never took it off. Only took it off at night. Adriana said. Her voice was shaking. I don't know. Then the girl lowered her gaze. I know everything. Adriana came very close to her. You know something, her friend averted her eyes. What are you, Michael? Lovers? Adriana even choked when she said that word. Calm down. He wasn't cheating on you. Kathy exhaled and got up from the steps. Tell me what you know. Adriana wanted to hear everything. I can't. I'm scared and started crying. Kathy, it's too late to repent now. Spit it out. A woman stood over her best friend from the past. I'm so sorry, please. I didn't mean any harm. I've been jealous of you from the beginning. Maybe that's what got me into the girlfriend thing, too. Kathy continued to sob. I don't get it. Can you tell me exactly what happened? Adriana was in a stupor. What does jealousy, friendship, and everything else have to do with it? If they are now looking for a missing person, I killed Michael, Kathy said quietly. You did what? Their eyes, Adriana. I'm sorry. Kathy fell on her knees in front of Adriana. Wait, explain exactly how, when, and where. The woman asked. Ethan, meanwhile, had turned on the tape recorder. Then, when you met him and he first came for a walk with us, I immediately fell in love with him. I thought he'd look at me too, and he kept his eyes on you. Then when you two started living together and you asked me out, I thought that was lucky. But no matter how many hints I made, he never even responded. Where did this David come from out of nowhere? Yeah, I liked him. But I told him right away that you'd be coming over very often. And we started to become family friends. Even then, I never gave up trying to get Michael, Kathy said. She wasn't looking at anyone at the time. You've got to be such a head shaker, Adriana said. Then you told me you were expecting a baby. I couldn't let that happen. I thought if I told you things, you'd get nervous and miscarry. So I did. And when David died, I didn't let it go to waste. The house was in need of renovation by then. So I started looking for reasons for Michael to come visit me. Kept telling the truth. Kathy. God, how blind was I? Adriana's sitting down now, because it was hard to hear how you've been lied to practically your whole life. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I'm definitely going to jail now. Kathy was crying more and more. And then what happened? She didn't expect anything good anymore. A woman whose husband disappeared. Before New Year's Eve, he told me he'd ask you to reconnect and be the three of us together again. I found out later that he did, but you said no. So I asked Michael to come over and sit down with me. He said he couldn't do that either because he didn't want to ruin things with you, and you'd celebrate New Year's Eve together. I was willing to wait. And when he called on the first of the year to wish you a Happy New Year, I thought of a new job for him, and he didn't say no. He said he'd do it quickly and come to you. She looked up at Adriana at that moment. Okay, at what point did you kill him? She asked then. She thought Kathy was not right in the head. He arrived as usual. I sat him down at the table, put out some salads, poured some tea. We sat talking. At some point, Michael said he couldn't eat anymore and went to the couch. At that moment, he took off his watch because he had to go to the yard. That's when I decided to let it be. When he turned around from the fireplace, I guided his neck with my hands and wanted to kiss him. Tears flowed from her eyes with renewed vigor. Stop crying. Can you tell me what happened? Kathy was starting to piss Adriana off, especially now when she started talking about kissing. My wife's insides were even tightening. He grabbed my hands, gave me this look and pushed me away. And then he turned around and went to the door. And I flew up behind him. And I pushed him in the back with all my might. I didn't expect him to start falling. But Michael fell and bumped his head against the corner. She pointed to the marble coffee table. What and where is he now? Adriana turned pale. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do anything wrong. It was an accident. Kathy started to yell. Ethan was sitting on the couch at that moment. He had such a drama in front of him. He was taping everything. I hope you called an ambulance. Adriana came very close to her. I checked. There was no pulse. Got really scared and dragged him out the second exit to the backyard. She looked up at her friend and fell silent. Is he still in there? Adriana pointed her finger in the direction where the exit was. Yes, Olechka, I'm sorry. I didn't know what I was doing. She followed her as she threw off her jacket and headed for the exit. Get away from me. Abruptly, she turned around. She saw Ethan following them. The woman jerked the doors open. The cold immediately hit her in the face. She stepped out here already into the snowdrift. She took a second step, but saw no one. Kathy, where is he? She shouted to the mistress of the house. It's farther behind the well. She pointed in the direction with her hand. God, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. Adriana walked through the snow and sobbed. She got to the place Kathy said she was going to. And she saw Michael's shoe. The woman crouched down and started digging it out of the snow. Because it was so cold outside, it hadn't changed much. Adriana, take this. Ethan handed her something. Everybody get away from me. She wouldn't calm down. Then Ethan went back inside. He decided to call the ambulance police so they could take it from there. After he hung up, he managed to get Adriana into the house. Kathy was drinking something at this point. Apparently, the sedative had been waiting for about an hour. After that time, everyone was already here. While the police paramedics were examining the body, Adriana sat and kept her eyes on Kathy. It seemed like she was about to get up and just tear up her now definitely ex-girlfriend to shreds. Ethan was in control of this. He knew the woman was in shock now, and in that stage, she could do anything. We're taking the bodies, and we're taking you all too. Standing in the doorway was a man in uniform. It was obvious that he was freezing. They all walked out of the house. Kathy was put in the police car, and Ethan asked that he and Adriana ride in his car. They spent 0 o'clock this afternoon at the station. Kathy was telling again how everything had happened, and Adriana was only confirming her words. Ethan handed over the tape he had made at Kathy's house. Okay, you're going home. We'll leave you here. He looked at Kathy. I'm sorry again. She never, the woman whispered. Ethan brought her home. He looked in the medicine cabinet for something to calm her down and dipped it into a glass of water. Adriana drank. She kicked back on the couch. There were different feelings inside. Right now, she was thinking how mean her friend had been. After all, she was at her house and making such a surprised look. When Adriana had told her about Michael disappearing and him lying in her backyard the whole time. I guess I'll just stay here and sit in the chair. Ethan, thank you, Adriana told him. She sat there, staring at one point and thinking. Unbeknownst to her, the shock or the sedative had taken its toll on her, and she fell asleep. Ethan had been watching her the whole time. But then his body couldn't take it either. and he fell asleep in the chair. Michael jumped up from Adriana's couch, startling herself and startling Ethan in the process. "It's all right." Immediately, a man came up to her. "It's not true," she cried, remembering last night. Unfortunately, but it wasn't. The man put his arm around her waist and sat her back behind the couch. "Oh my God. The man I know took all my favorite people away from me a long time ago." Adriana started crying again. Ethan went to the kitchen. He put the kettle on and dug out her sedative again. He realized that even now he could not leave Adriana alone. He went to the kitchen, made coffee, and came back with 2 steps. "Here, you need a drink." He set it in front of her. "I don't want one." She shook her head. Good. He didn't argue with her. The time until lunch stretched very slowly, and when the phone rang in the silence, it was like a bell striking above his ear. "Hello." Adriana answered the phone. "Hello. Can you come over?" a man's voice asked her. "Yes, of course." She shifted her gaze to Ethan. He nodded his head. At the same moment, she got up from the couch and went to the front doors. The man followed her. "Thank you for being there for me. I don't know how I would have done it alone." She turned to him. "It's okay. Everyone needs the help of someone else," he said when they were already in the driveway. They got into the car, which Ethan walked around for a few more minutes, and only then did they drive. There was complete silence in the cabin. Everyone was thinking about their own things. When they pulled up to the station, Adriana couldn't get out of the car. Her legs felt like absorbent cotton. Ethan gave her his hand, and together they went inside. The investigators were saying something. Adriana sat and listened, but the conversation was through absorbent cotton. But one thing Adriana heard clearly. It turned out, after the examination of Michael's body at the morgue, that when Kathy carried him outside, he was still alive. Alive. The wife jumped up from her chair. Yeah, he had a severe blow to the head, but his heart was beating. "Your friend." When the man said the word, he looked at Adriana as if apologizing. "Couldn't have gotten a pulse. She's not a doctor." Oh my God. It gets scarier every day. Adriana became hysterical. It was clear that she wouldn't listen to anything else. And then they started interrogating her every day. Both Adriana and Ethan were called in. Until it was over. It was almost at that moment they were allowed to take the body away. They had to bury it. "Don't worry, I'll make arrangements," Ethan muttered to Adriana. He himself doesn't know what it was that got him so hooked on her that he just wanted to help her. He did make arrangements with the funeral home. They did everything to the best of their ability. Adriana looked at her husband lying in the coffin and could not believe that all this was really happening. "Forgive me, my love, for not believing you." She kissed him. And then there was the trial. Kathy sat in the cage. She only had eyes for Adriana, and Adriana for her. People were saying things, but the widow didn't know what was going on. She was asked something for the 100th time. She answered on automatic. When the judge left to pass sentence, Adriana turned to Ethan. "Oh, get me out of here," she asked him. "Okay, let's go." He gave her his hand. They arrived at her house again. Ethan was sitting in the same chair again. He was looking at Adriana. She moved like a robot, knew where to pick up things and where to put them. "You need to eat properly," he told her. "Do you realize what happened?" She sat down on the couch and stared at the man. With difficulty, but the picture was becoming clearer. He fell silent. "I don't know how many years she was sent to prison for, but I wish her all the pain she went through," I told Adriana, with anger in my voice. "You don't have to." "So she's human too," Ethan said. "And I'm not. She ruined my whole life." Adriana cried. "That's it. You don't have to cry anymore. It won't help anything." He patted her hand. "When was the last time you were home?" She asked the man. "The day you and I were going to go carry." He didn't finish because he thought he would make Adriana uncomfortable. "Wow. At least you ate." She looked toward the kitchen. "Well, yeah, Something before Kosovo, he smiled, and slept. Adriana began to question him. It's okay. The main thing is that everything is the same with you. He smiled at her. You're a real person, you know. She smiled for the first time in a while. I cared before your case. Ethan did spend a lot of time in this apartment, but he didn't feel anything but rash and some kind of hunger. Even though Adriana asks about it, he made her porridge, sandwiches, and everything else for herself every morning. Oh, why didn't I pay you? She gulped, got up from the couch, and started looking for her bag. Calm down. It's nothing. I've basically done nothing. Just put you in the right frame of mind. He took her hands in his. But it can't be like that, can it? She sat down on the couch again. Everything in life can be. He smiled at her. She calmed down. They continued to communicate with Ethan. Summer came. Adriana came to the cemetery every day. She sat on a bench, talking to Michael. She loved being here. Hey, what are you doing? Ethan called her every night. It's okay. Come visit. She always invited him, but he rarely agreed. At first, he didn't come at all, saying he was busy, but then he started coming once every week or two, and they knew almost everything about each other. You know, I miss you so much. I'm so used to having you around, Adriana said to him. They were sitting in her kitchen. It was snowing outside the window. If you wanted me to, I'd stay for good. He finally decided to say it. I can't betray Michael. She shook her head. They spent New Year's Eve together, and on January 1, they drove to the cemetery together to honor Michael's memory. They stood by the grave for a short time, put flowers on it, and drove back home. I can't believe it's been a whole year since he's been gone, Adriana said sadly. Adriana, I'm sorry. I'm a little busy today. I'll drive you home and leave you there. I'll come back tonight, and I'll look at her. Sure, she smiled. Adriana went up to the floor, undressed, made herself a hot tea. She sat down on the sofa, returned to the plate, and took the family album in her hands. How happy were we? Adriana looked at the pictures. The album was half empty because those photos, where Kathy was, she just tore. The woman didn't realize how she'd fallen asleep. Hello. Michael came running towards her. All around was summer, warmth, grass, green apple trees. Then Adriana. Michael, how are you? Adriana looked at him. She ran up to him, touched his face, and couldn't believe he was alive. I just came to meet you. He kissed her cheeks, lips, neck, and cheek. He always did that, and she always said that. Adriana, not giving up on Ethan. He's good and he loves himself. Looked at her seriously. Michael, what are you saying? I love you. She couldn't look into his eyes. I don't. Remember me. Live with Ethan. He was looking at her very seriously. She knew that look. You've done well, she thought. She laughed. Very well. He kissed her once more and disappeared. Michael woke up Adriana. She thought the smell of his perfume still lingered in the room. At that moment, the doorbell rang. Adriana went to open it. Ethan stood on the doorstep. In his hand was a bouquet of flowers. He smiled and held out a cake to her. I'm sorry. I just woke up. That's why so much for slowing down. She took the flowers and the cake and carried everything into the kitchen. I don't know if you're going to say no or not, but I brought champagne too. He took out an empty bottle. Come in. She called him to the table. I want to drink to the most beautiful lady in this room. Ethan raised his glass. I'm smitten. She pretended to be surprised. They were talking about something. Adriana looked at Ethan and realized that she really liked him. And Michael had said, rightly, that he was a reliable man. What are you thinking about? Ethan asked her then. I was dreaming about Michael, she said, but at the same moment she thought she was about to be taken for a lunatic. And what did he say to you? It was interesting, Ethan, to make me look in your direction, she smiled. And you became even more interesting. I'm sitting here thinking, why not? There was laughter in the kitchen again. "I love it when you laugh," Ethan said. He got up and walked out of the kitchen. He was gone only a few minutes. Then he came to the door, knocked on the jamb. "Come in." Adriana understood his game. "Hello. Can I meet you?" he asked and looked Adriana straight in the eyes. "Yes, my name is Adriana. And you are?" "I'm Ethan. What do you do?" Adriana asked a new question. "I'm going to ask you out tomorrow, and I think I might say yes." They had another drink. After that, they talked about everything for a long time. They sat up until nightfall, and then Ethan started to get ready to go home. As he held her hand as he walked back, at those words, her heart folded in her heart. She remembered the gruesome story again. "Don't." He put his arm around her. "How about you stay?" she asked him, even though she knew it sounded ambiguous now. "No, a decent girl doesn't act like that." He wagged his finger at her. "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow." She closed the door. After that, Adriana lay down on the couch and started thinking about Ethan. Not as a good acquaintance, but as a man. They had started dating. Ethan tried to surprise her all the time, making up things, taking her on outings, and close to New Year's Eve, he proposed to her. "I said yes," she whispered then. They played a wedding, at which there was almost no one. And in March, Adriana was surprised to discover she was expecting a baby. "Don't even look. This baby is going to be born." Ethan wagged his finger at her. "Thank you," Adriana said quietly. She knew it was Michael who had helped her get pregnant. "What's there whispering?" Her husband came up to her. "I wasn't going to do anything," she said quietly. "Adriana, I'm the luckiest man in the world," he told her. "And I'm a lucky woman," she rejoiced. In the summer, when they were walking in the park, Adriana couldn't even see her legs because of her huge belly. They thought they were going to give birth to a rich man. And it was. On the doctor's due date, little Michael was born. Neither Ethan nor Adriana had any doubts about what the baby would be called. The now proud father went out to the yard every day with the stroller. He looked at his wife and could not believe how lucky he was.